Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Physical Preparation Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Robertson, and I'll be joined on the line later today by Nick Littlehales. Now, we're going to talk a ton about sleep over the course of this show. It's one of my longest shows ever, but it's only because Nick is such an interesting guy. He's got great stories, and he's so insightful when it comes to sleep. But one thing that I wanted to focus on here today is something that may get lost in the shuffle, or that maybe didn't resonate with me early on, that I want to hopefully resonate with you. And that's the idea of not thinking about sleep as something that we only do at night. In fact, I don't even just think about it as sleep anymore. Sure, that's the word that we use, but thinking more in terms of overall recovery. And this was a huge shift for me because I was one of these guys where I was militant. I wanted to get my 8 hours of sleep every night. And if I didn't get that, I would think about, the next day, I'm going to perform awful. I'm not going to be at my best. And it would literally impact how I perform the next day. And I think once you listen to this show with Nick, you're going to have a better understanding of how we really need to think, number one, in 90-minute sleep cycles. And we need to think of sleep and recovery as a daily process, not just something that we do at night, and also even on a grander scale, a weekly or a monthly process. So it's not just how many hours did I get in this one night, or how many sleep cycles did I get in this one day. It's thinking on the more macro level, like how many sleep cycles are you getting across the week? And when you start to think in this fashion, it really tends to liberate you. It gives you a newfound appreciation for all these different times that you can focus on your recovery. Now, I'll give you a practical example. Last night, I knew I was only probably going to get 4 sleep cycles. Tuesday night, I tend to record my podcast. Kendall has soccer practice. So it's just a busy day. I got a lot going on, and it takes me longer to unwind. So I know that it's going to be a shorter night, and it was impacted even more so because young Cade decided at 4:59 in the morning that he was scared of the dark and he wanted me to put him back in bed. So right there, in months past, I would have said, F it, today's going to be an awful day. I'm not going to be productive. And now I look at it from a much broader perspective. And I say, look, okay, so I didn't get enough sleep during the night. How can I make up for that? And so I've already got planned. I've got a couple gaps in my day today. I'm going to try and fit in a couple naps, or as Nick would describe them, CRPs. So I'm going to try and fit in a couple CRPs, relax, unwind a little bit, hopefully even get 30 minutes of rest. And then I can make up for it tonight, or I can make up for it this weekend by going to bed a little bit earlier on one of those given nights. So I would implore you guys, as you go through this interview, start to think about sleep and recovery on the grander scale. Just like one training session doesn't make or break an entire program, one night of sleep doesn't make or break your recovery process. If you guys start to think of this over the course of days, weeks, and even months, you're going to have a much more profound perspective, and I think a much more enlightened perspective on how you can enhance and maximize your sleep and recovery, or that of your clients and athletes. So with that being said, enough from me. Let's talk to Nick. Nick Littlehales is an international elite sports sleeping recovery coach and regarded as a leading industry expert with over 30 years experience in the world of sleep, sleeping habits, and sleeping product design. He's recognized as the world's first ever sports sleep coach with over 17 years dedicated to elite sport and elite athletes. Now that I've covered the bio, let me tell you this. Nick's book on sleep has literally changed my entire thought process on sleep. And I realize that probably sounds super corny, but I think once you listen to this show, you'll have an idea just how powerful this stuff really is. In this show, Nick and I discuss how to plan your day based on your chronotype, why having an anchor point for your sleep is so critical, and why we need to start thinking about sleep as a daily or even weekly process and not something we just do at night. Let's do this. Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show here today. It's a real honor to have you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I loved sport when I was a teenager at school. Wanted to try and be a top athlete, traveling around the world, being famous,
Yes.
doing good things. But, that didn't quite work out. I did spend a little bit of time in the professional area of golf, about 5 years, but that was late 70s, early 80s when sport was a completely different type of place it is today. So it was hard work trying to become a professional, but I fell into the world of the sleep industry in the early 80s and pretty much spent the rest of my life being stuck in sleep and sleeping products and design. But I think all along that route, I sort of managed to graduate up from an area sales representative running around in my company car selling beds to retailers into the international sales and marketing board director of a company called Slumberland Beds. They were a big group, lots of licensees across the world, very sort of strong brand. So we had to always be innovative and leading. So that made me do a lot of research projects and working around a lot of the clinical side of sleep and that sort of thing. And I was part of a small team who set up the first UK Sleep Council, trying to sort of put sleep on the map because it was, I think, all the time I'd been in it. Lots of great reasons why sleep was important to us as human beings, but it hadn't translated into the population in general.
Yep.
So a lot of the things that were coming from the academic clinical world was more to do with the sleep disorders, the clinical process of sleep. Actually, what everybody did from, waking to going back to sleep again was not really their focus, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Things have changed probably a little bit over the last decade, last 5 years even. But I think it was just one of those moments of constant acquisitions of the group that I was involved with. So you're always looking at 5-year strategies that end up being 2-year strategies and sell off and acquisition and all sorts of things. And I suppose just had that little midlife crisis, sat in my UK office, which happened to be Oldham, Manchester in the UK. And I was working out a 12-month contract because I decided I was going to go off and do something else. So I was a little bit twiddling my thumbs for 12 months. And a few strange set of circumstances cropped up around me in the world of football. I'd done a little sponsorship deal with the local football club, Oldham Athletic. So we put the company's name on the front of their football shirts, which in the late 90s created a lot of media fuss.
Sure.
Changed today. But what happened, it just engaged me to, and I think the key word in this one, Mike, is I wrote a letter with a stamp on it to Manchester United, which was the local football club to where I was based, and just really, I suppose, intrigued to find out what a club like Manchester United might be doing in recovery and sleep and things like that. Probably the underlying driven factor was, maybe if Manchester United players all like Slumberland Beds, then we'll go and sell a few more, as I was a sales and marketing director at the time. But I bumped into Alex Ferguson, the manager, on a couple of random occasions. And so the letter went to him. He asked all the members of staff, club doctor, physio. There was no sports science guys around then. Mm-hmm. Data was very naively put together, I have to say, late
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Yeah.
But he was open-minded enough to sort of think, well, if we know nothing about this and we don't do anything about this, and I know it's certainly something that he did every day, like we all do or hope to do, then that he was just intrigued and opened the doors. The club physio at the time was a guy called Dave Fever, and he had a physical concern with one of the players, which was a centre-half, centre-back, main defender, who was being wrapped in cotton wool and wouldn't train, would only play, through significant lower back issues. And as you will know, you don't sort lower back issues by going in with a knife
right.
until it's almost too late. So the interesting was, from his perspective, he thought, well, if we don't have any sort of, that sort of intrusive process with any athlete of just how far do you go, if we don't know anything about what this player is doing away from the club, then maybe while he's rehabilitating when he's with us, i.e. with the physio, he created a word called dehabilitating while he's away. Mm-hmm. So it was simply that I just was asked to, because my competence was products in those days, was to check out what he was sleeping on with and his environment and things like that. And we classically came across this chiropractically, orthopedically endorsed rock hard mattress that obviously for a profile like a centre half, tall, was just getting into all sorts of negative sleeping positions, trying to make this product comfortable. So I just made some changes to that, and whilst there was no significant change in the fact that we solved a lower back problem, what was noticeable is that the player was able to do a little bit of extra training, was able to spend less time with the physio. The physio spotted, while he was treating the player, spotted certain things that were shifting in the right direction, and that engaged the physio in thinking about what else possibly beyond that, as well as that, they could do. And so literally we were just catching up, having a cup of coffee, talking about sleep and products and sport and everything that I'd learnt, and we're just downloading information into him in no particular way. Mm-hmm. And that just, my company wasn't really bothered about me going and talking to a football club. What's use that to us as a major organisation? And so I was pretty much left to my own devices, and I was asked to talk to some of the players. I was asked to be around the club a little bit more, just downloading all this information, and the media, watching a club like that, somebody got a little bit intrigued. There's somebody coming in and out the training centre who they don't know anything about. It's not a player, it's not an agent, it's not a coach. Let's just find out who it is, because we can write about it tomorrow probably. And because nobody, it's not that nobody cared, but they couldn't care because they had no idea, or they had no relationship with. There's some guy in the club talking to the club about sleep, and it just goes, well, it's not even a secret. There's nothing to protect, because it just seemed ridiculous. So of course they pick up the word coach, they pick up the word sleep, and they said that Manchester United, those pampered millionaire players, have now got a sleep coach, and it was all a bit very tongue-in-cheek, as we sort of say in the UK. It was very sort of, what on earth are they doing now? Right. But I think if my UK office had been maybe anywhere, I won't say on the planet, but I could say if it was anywhere in the UK other than Alex Ferguson and Manchester United at that time, my letter would not even have been opened. They would have spotted, the Slumberland logo on it somewhere, or my title, sales and marketing director of Slumberland. I think it would have just gone in the bin. Yeah. But it was one of those time and place moments. The players it was an unusual set of circumstances, which I think, in my little story, as you've asked, is probably one of the key things about where we are today, Mike. And in that club, those players had no social media, more than likely a phone at best, right? They had been brought through the ranks, the local ranks. So not only homegrown players, but quite a number of them local-grown players. If I looked at the percentage of players within the club who were classified to be outside the British Isles, you could count them probably on half a hand. So the reality was that these players were far more under the control of the manager and the coaches. They had far more time on their hands to concentrate on their sport and on the techniques and on the skill sets and recovery, because there was very few distractions. If Alex Ferguson said to his sons, basically, who'd grown up, from the lower ranks right the way through the levels into the first team, and this was David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Nicky Butt, the Neville brothers, as well as a few outside of that. They were a breed that you could educate.
Yeah.
And when they started the shift patterns of as schedules started to become a little bit more intense, as you sort of shifted into very much the late 90s, early 2000s, with Champions League games, as they call it, and things like that, the managers decided to double up training sessions prior to the season starting. So they would train in the morning and train in the afternoon, which was not the norm. And to get them from that point A to B, me and the new physio, which is a guy called Rob Swire, who we got on very well with, decided that the best thing that we could do in between double up training sessions was actually to point them in the direction of actually sleeping. Midday. Now, that particular moment, we cleaned out one of the rooms. We put in some recovery lounges for the sake of argument. We actually, did our best to come up with how the players could utilize this environment to catch 30 minutes, 20 minutes, a nap in between sessions. And we could actually see in the limited data bit in the afternoons, maybe a sprint between A and E, a 30-yard dash or whatever it might be, standing jumps. You could actually see that there was a little bit of difference, a little bit of change, but very naive, Mike, very naive. And some of those players played for the national squad. They influenced the national squad by saying, here we are at a World Cup in France. The blankets aren't very good. These pillows are a bit like this. I mean, the mattress is a bit hard. And the England squad coaches were going, what are you lot on about? And that's when they got in contact with me to say, what on earth are you doing with some of these players, because they're influencing us and asking us to do things we've never been asked to do before. That led me into working with Arsenal Football Club, because the physio at England, the national team, was also shared between Arsenal. And, another little bit of a significant moment was a new manager had arrived at Arsenal Football Club, and this was a French manager called Arsene Wenger. And he didn't look like a football manager. He looked like a lecturer at a university. But he came in and he started applying some of the things that's quite the norm for sport today, in taking your shoes off before you came into the training ground, to smells and sensory, to training techniques, to all of these types of things started to creep in. And so he gave the authority for me to speak in front of the whole first team Arsenal squad. And I think that was probably the weirdest moment in my career because I had to become a sleep coach.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, that are going on today were born in those moments when, not only did everybody in the room and the coaches and all their families and all their friends, everybody in that club, inside and outside of it, I was the only person in the whole of that framework that actually was taking sleep, not necessarily seriously, but was trying to communicate it to everybody to create its importance. And so you very much felt alone. You felt a little bit ridiculous standing in front of fearless young males who could sleep on a clothesline, as they call it. And so it was kind of like I was forced to come up with a technique, a language for them. They're not, with all due respect to them, they're not necessarily college, university graduates.
Yeah.
They've not, and they've had no education about sleep from their parents, from their schooling per se. So talking to them about something they know nothing about and don't care about and nobody else cares about was a difficult job. But that's really, what started the process. And I think every sort of 2 or 3 years since that point, throughout the 18 years I've been doing, there's always been little significant moments that sort of keeps this ball rolling.
Yeah.
I've been going bust every week for 18 years. Sleep is hard work to generate money, to be successful. But one key moment was working with British Cycling. They were charged to try and create Olympic gold medal winning cyclists, which Britain had always failed to do, and also to generate off the back of that a healthier population with us riding our bikes, riding around city centres on hire bikes, getting people off the road, out of their cars, to ride to work, to be a healthier population, to save money in all our health authorities. Because of that, there was a complete strategic plan that by using British cycling to generate a better presence in the world of sport, then maybe the whole population will benefit. So because they adopted, can we improve the bike? Can we improve the equipment? Can we improve what they wear? It's the human on the equipment that makes it run. That's the engine. So we have to concentrate on that as much as anything. But how are we going to get those gains? And they came up with what's very commonplace today, almost boring in sport these days. But those days it was the aggregation of marginal gains, and that meant they could not disregard sleep. But they needed something that was practical, that was achievable, that was not too intrusive, not too clinical, something that would have a real benefit right across the sport, on Tour de France's, long tours for 3 weeks, different hotels every night, 200 kilometers a day, very intensive sport. And so I was the one who was wandering around doing that, so I was the only option they had. And I think from that particular point, we had a lot of success in that arena. We had a lot more success into London 2012. That rolled on into Rio 2016. We're already, in an Olympic framework beyond cycling. We're talking all sports in Olympic disciplines into the Winter Olympics next year and Tokyo 2020, all the world championships in between. And, pretty much, from archery, which is completely a mental, not physical, or team sport, through to BMX, bobsleighers, snowboarders, rowing, cycling, rugby, NFL, NBA, NHL, anybody involved in the pressures of the 24/7 world that we all live in, whether you're in sport or not, is at this moment in time looking very, very closely at how they approach this this natural mental recovery tool called sleep. And it's never been the highest on its agenda, and that's why after 18 years of being a career as a sleep coach, I am now talking to Mike Robertson from Indianapolis, who's a specialized guy in specialized sport about this subject, sleep, which is truly amazing. But there's the wonderful journey.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think what's interesting is you took this, like you said, you kind of found this really tight niche at a very specific moment in time. You spun it. Now, will you talk to me a little bit about your business, right? Because there's obviously the consulting and the work that you're doing there, but I mean, you've taken it so much further than that with the product and everything else. So would you mind just explaining a little bit that side of your business as well?
Yeah, I think it was born out. Obviously, my initial competence was not a degree from the university in sleep. It was just spending a lot of time in the industry, but the core competence was product. So when I was trying to find, how do I communicate, and if we certainly don't just focus on football, but UK football, but let's just take it in mind. There's a group of 24 players who are all 20 years old in the main, and nobody's talked to them about this at all, ever. And never mind the coaches. And you had to find a way to do it. So to try and summarize why it's a bit broader is I looked at one of the key factors was how to get an athlete from A to B, and this whole 8-hour thing, trying to sleep for just 8 hours at night, and everything I'd found out sort of was a bit contradictory to that. So I knew about 90 minutes in the clinical world is a time period to measure all the various sleep data stages, and then you look at it again. I knew that 5 90-minute cycles would add up to 7.5 hours, which would relate to the 8 hours that's floating around in their heads for no apparent reason. And I also thought, well, that's the length of a football game. And so if we talk in 90-minute cycles, that's the length of their event. That means they've got some relationship to that. I need to look at how we can create a routine where we can try and find all the recovery slots throughout all their schedule to look at it in a slightly different way to work with them. And that worked for them. So they started talking about, I'm on a 5-cycle routine, I'm on a 4-cycle routine. I got a cycle at lunchtime, I got a cycle midday. That adds to my 30 cycles in a week. And actually I'm busting it at the moment on 28 cycles. They started to create a little bit of language that was a bit more proactive and defined for the coaches and everybody. Really about stop wasting valuable time. So what happened was suddenly you've got 24/7, you've got 7 days a week, because we can't go much further than that. Can't even control the day in front of us. You've got, so I just thought, well, there's what's principally got to happen here. You've got to touch on 7 key areas which look at recovery. And one was to raise their awareness of the circadian rhythms of the day, the sun up and sundown process. But how do you do that? There's the other one which is always knocking around, but it's your chronotype, your characteristic, whether you're a morning or night type, which is critical. Those two things combined with number 3, cycles rather than hours. The other one is what do you do prior to any sleep period, whether it's a nap at lunchtime or a full nocturnal slot. So pre-sleep. Then there's post-sleep, which has never been more important. So pre and post-sleep periods. Then we are a much better balance between activity and recovery, because we're just ripping all our recovery opportunities away every minute of the day. So we used to get them naturally in the 90s, but we don't get them anymore because we've filled them with other things. And then, of course, the environment that you sleep in. You and I can sleep outside by the fire under a tree. We can sleep in hotels, hanging off cliffs, on boats for 3 months sailing. It's kind of like there was always a lot of myths and misunderstandings that what you're actually, where you're sleeping is somewhat irrelevant. What you're sleeping on is somewhat irrelevant, but you need to know how to improve those two things without going too far or raising their expectations. Because with any athlete, if they can't sleep in the hotel in Kazakhstan in Russia tomorrow night with a Champions League game, then what they've got in their home, the big fat mattress full of springs and full of this and full of that, the environment that's temperature controlled and aircon and everything else in their own home, but we can't replicate any of that over there, then we've got to get a better balance between our expectations of the products we're sleeping with, including our partners, Mike, and the environment. So you're getting a better. So basically, you ended up with 7 key sleep recovery areas. They covered those subjects, which included product. Because I had a competence there, I was able to, as somebody who was fairly high profile in my industry, to actually say, I tell you what, I know a lot about this industry, and there's a lot of myths to be taken on board here, and that you do not need these things to, going out every now and again and buying a big fat mattress and a pillow to stop you snoring is all marketing, terminology. And there's no science behind it. There's no data behind it. There's no chiropractic behind it. There's nothing behind it. It's just guys like me who don't know anything, and we just make stuff up for you in the population. So it's kind of the reason why it's broader is because if you just focus on any particular area or any particular intervention, then in the main they don't work. So if you just raise somebody's knowledge of the sun up and sundown process and our relationship with light and dark and serotonin and melatonin hormones triggering things, if you just focus on that and not these other 6 areas, it's highly likely it's going to have no impact. If you just focus on pre-sleep or post-sleep routines, it's not going to have an impact. If you don't change that process of how difficult it is to sleep for many, many hours in one block when we've always done it polyphasically, and if you don't get that bit as the core, everything else won't work. And if you just think you can solve your whole sleeping problem by getting a fancy mattress, that ain't going to work. It ain't going to work if you put blackout into your bedroom, but then forget to put light into your bedroom because the one doesn't work with the other one. So it's kind of like there's 7 little steps. Just touch base in each of those. Just raise your knowledge a little bit. Just get a better relationship with that and that and that and that, and they'll all come together to immediately release a very natural approach to mental and physical recovery that would literally, for a lot of my clients today and beyond that, because of the book that's floating around the world. So I'm not focused on sport anymore by default. It's one of those things that by going through that path you can really change what you're doing, and that's the important factor, I think, which sort of it either differentiates me in a good way or it differentiates me to be the crazy one who does it like that.
I love it. So I absolutely love it, and I just, like I told you before the show, I love the book. I found just I think a lot of people struggle and have more anxiety than they should about sleep. It should be, like you mentioned, it should be relaxing and restful. And for a lot of us, it drives more anxiety than it should. So I actually want to dive in on some of these topics. And, you mentioned chronotypes before, and it's something that probably a lot of people are aware of, even if they're not familiar with the term. So could you just talk about what a chronotype is and why it's important with regards to individualizing your own sleep?
Yeah. It's the last thing anybody, particularly my age group, wants to do is ask the younger age group to look back to the past. We're looking out into the future. Everything that I'm doing is for the younger generation as well as the older, but focused on the younger generation, because those are the people in elite sport. But you sometimes do have to remind us all that we are human beings, and the relationship between the sun coming up and the sun going down, depending on where you are on this planet, and your exposure to light and dark is quite critical. It's not by coincidence, but it is that in countries like Finland, where their light and dark relationship is different to many other places on the planet. They have the highest suicide rates on the planet. These relationships between light and dark are quite critical. So I have a very, very quick little way so somebody can visualize it listening to this. Let me just say, Mike, you are a PM chronotype. In old school language, that would be called an owl.
Yeah.
Somebody who goes hunting at night, let's say, not in the mornings. I'm a morning chronotype, so I go hunting in the mornings. Now, basically, you and I, as two human beings, we would be sleeping outside. That's what we did. And the sun would start to come close towards the horizon. Now, as a morning chronotype, I've got this genetic twist that literally means I start generating serotonin, the unsuppressing happy wake active hormone in my pineal gland, which is telling my brain to be active. I start making this shift quite quickly, even before the sun's got to the horizon. The light is changing, the blue light is there, and it's making this trigger in my brain. Now, for you, you're about an hour to 2 hours behind me.
Yep.
Because it doesn't affect you as quickly. So I get up, put the fire on, make breakfast because I'm hungry, make the coffee. And by that time, you have got enough serotonin in you to be disturbed. But I'm actually waking you up with the coffee to sort of say, come on, because we've only got so much daylight today. So I will drag you up until lunchtime, midday, sun's at its highest. We've both been active. I've been dragging you through half the day, and I've been very active. So we have take on some fuel, and basically there is the highest levels of serotonin, and basically it's quite natural, urgent need in the world of sleep for me and you to go into some sort of recovery state, curl up, just have a chill out, just have a rest. Now what happens is that I'm ready to actually sleep for a longer period now as a morning chronotype, but you're tapping on my shoulder saying, come on, because you are moving in the other way around now. So all afternoon, you're dragging me along. And as the sun starts to disappear, my melatonin's building, my serotonin's disappearing, yours hasn't been affected. So as we come to the end of the day, when it becomes dark, we can't see, you build the fire, you cook dinner, you entertain me, I fall asleep, you clean the pots and chill out for a bit longer before you go into a sleep state because you're about an hour to 2 hours behind me. Now, this was always called owls and larks. This was always something that you couldn't, but technology allows you to see this genetic twist. So what is important about this is that you can't change it. You can camouflage it. But the balance, you can't necessarily quote me on this, but there's been a lot of experience recently, even talking about it this morning, and from personal experience with large groups, just doing some just general study by asking everybody to put their hands up. You can pretty much say that the population is made up of about maybe 60-40, 70-30 towards PM chronotypes. But the world is driven by AM chronotypes, because it's this start of the day, this point where we have to get up and do things. It's 9 o'clock at work. It's get there and do it. And yet, for the majority, that's the wrong time of day for them. So you see all the nighttime chronotypes being dragged into an AM's world, and then being criticized for being still awake, after 12 a.m. at night. So they need help. And when you look at studying through schools, through college and universities, the timings of exams, you look at events in sports, when you look at a team, or even in corporate business, Mike, or even within your own business, and you go, oh no, Mike's a morning chronotype, so everything in Mike's world is driven by the AM slot.
Yep.
He wants all the meetings in the morning. He wants all the strategy in the morning. He wants the high-intensity training in the morning. He wants to do all of this in the morning, because in the afternoon he wants to sort of chill out and be somebody else.
Yep.
And so suddenly you can make a significant change in somebody's life by just making them aware of their chronotype and the rest of the people around them. They may not be able to change, and probably can't, all the other people around them, all the schedules, all the timings of when you need to do something. But by their knowledge, they're sat next to a morning chronotype who's driving them nuts. The morning chronotype will do things like this. You have to protect yourself like that. The coach is a morning chronotype, so be careful. He's asking you to do this, so you need to do that to help yourself. There is an event. There is a global world asking you to do certain things. And even today, there is research knocking around, because we love to measure, of course, is that if you take something like the NHL and you take a large group of players and you look at their chronotypes, then you look at all the events, all the games when they're played, early afternoon, late evening, later than that. And strangely enough, you can actually see the differences between the mix of chronotypes and the times that they're playing as to certain little data points. And they might be marginal in some cases, but when you actually look in sport and you look at the schedules we're under, if you are not aware that your squad and everybody around it, the mix of their sleep characteristics and how that's driving schedules and how that's driving training, ridiculously, if you look at the data of a nighttime chronotype and you're tracking data in the morning and not in the afternoon, their data will be different. Yeah. It will be different. And you could think, well, that player's not on it, or that athlete's not on it, or it's not quite there, basically. And so we're finally starting, only because if you take the word sleep away and call it mental and physical recovery, you've got a chance.
Yep.
Because sleep means something that's sad and a waste of time and taken for granted. And you can't change people's mindsets about that. If you take away the word nap and call it a fantastic 20 minutes recharge, just like your phone and your device and your charger, it's a fantastic little moment to get alertness and awareness right up at the right time and takes the pressure off wasting sleep nocturnally. Now we have a change. If you call that a CRP, if you title that in a different way, as well as chronotyping, sleep characteristic is about managing the athletes and schedules as far as recovery and performance is concerned, then you have a totally different aspect about how they look at this data and characterize it, because for once, probably in their whole lives, like this conversation today, they suddenly realize that every morning when they wake up, they're forcing themselves into the day, and it's because of their chronotype. And if they just did something to start their day in a better way, then they wouldn't have the impacts of this, and they'd feel really, really far more proactive and personally in control. And as soon as that happens, wow, you have a change within a group.
Yep. So this follows that same line of thinking, but why is getting up at the same time every day so critical? This is something that you really harped on in your book. I think a lot of us, myself included, struggle with it. So why is that such an important piece of kind of your equation?
Well, there's two ways to look at that, to be honest, Mike. What you're looking for is one anchor point to start your I won't use the word planning, but to start the process of, say, sleeping in 90-minute cycles, sleeping in cycles, a polyphasic approach to your mental and physical recovery. You need an anchor point. And the start of the day is the most critical to us all. When we actually go to sleep, there are so more variable factors in that area, particularly if you're sleeping polyphasically. So what you have to first of all say to yourself is, if you think monophasically and just in one block, then this is hard. If you think polyphasically, right up until we invented the light bulb, not that long ago,
yep,
then it's a different mindset on it. So what you're doing is you're chopping the 24 hours up into 90-minute slots. You're then looking at, you need your anchor point. Well, if you're a morning chronotype, there's no point picking 10 o'clock. in the morning. It has to be somewhere that has some relationship with the sun-up process. It's sun-up, it's start-up, it's get going. The other way around is stop, suppress, finish. Now, we like startups. We don't like finishing, right? We don't like ending our days. So if you could just get another thing in, you'll do it, because there may not be another day, but we like the start of the day.
Yep.
So I think from the whole position of picking a time, picking a start is the start of your day. When you use the word constant everyday wake time, that's when I think it just needs a little bit of better interpretation. What I'm doing, and I'll use mine as a quick example, is I start with, I'm a morning chronotype. 6:30 has always been a time when I naturally wake and I'm hungry and I can't stay in bed. I need to get up and eat. Now that was a happy time when I was an international sales and marketing director. It's a happy time with me with what I do now, and it fits my chronotype. And also, I want to get up. I don't want to be hanging around. I can't have a different time of day depending on the seasons, or the sun comes up at 4 o'clock last month.
Yep.
Well, I can't wake up at 4 o'clock. That's too early. That's too early a start. And I don't want to be going from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock and then maybe 7 o'clock when we hit winter in certain parts of the place. So this is my nice time. So I pick 6 o'clock or 6:30. Just remember, I'm normally working with a group of people who do not like to be told what to do. They don't like routines. They don't like plans. They want to have natural ability. So I pick 6:30 because it's so easy for me to work out 90-minute periods throughout the 24. So the first 90 minutes of my day would be up to 8 o'clock, and then on to 9:30, and then on to 11. Going backwards, it's 5 o'clock, it's 3:30, it's 2 a.m., it's 1:30, it's 11, it's 12:30, sorry, it's 11, it's 9:30. Right, so immediately, without thinking too much about it, it just becomes a subconscious thing, is if I can use that anchor point of 6:30 when I naturally wake and switch my alarm off, and I use the alarm so I don't run past it, then what I've got is a series of sleep and wake times. Okay? Mm-hmm. And this is where it doesn't become this fixed, I've got to do this every day. What you're doing is you're at least keeping in harmony with something. You're at least keeping in pattern with something. And have you at least got some rhythm to your day with something? And that means if the sun up and sundown process is all about rhythm and pattern and harmony, then I'm really trying my best to provide that for my brain. So if I want to catch, if I have to get up earlier and become a sleep coach before 8 a.m. after the first 90 minutes of my day, and I'm not being specific, it's not, oh my God, it's got to be 90 minutes. I'm saying that first 90 minutes of my day is all about me fueling up, hydrating, exercise, mental challenges, tech delay, and making sure that I am fully ready for what is a pretty intense environment out there in the modern world. So I don't want to become a sleep coach till 8 o'clock. Now, if Mike asked me to do a podcast at 7 a.m. because of time zones, then I will go, Mike, why? And you'll go, well, it's time zone, Nick, and we can't do it there. Okay. There's one of those outside influence challenges of the modern world. Yep. So I go, okay, I am now going to put my alarm on for 5 o'clock, Mike, right? Not just 6 or 6:15 or 6:45 or 5:30. I go back a full 90-minute cycle, and I wake at 5 o'clock, and I have my full 90-minute period to give myself time to bowel and bladder empty, to hydrate, to fuel up, to get the appetite back, plenty of daylight, whether it's from a lamp or whether it's from the summer sun outside, to get those serotonin levels up, mental challenges, exercise, if whatever, and then I'm podcasting with you at 7:30, right?
Yep.
And as the day goes on, then I will use little tiny, every 90 minutes, a little 1 or 2 minute zone out break just away from what I'm doing to add up into my whole program. I might grab, 30 minutes is, 30% of 90. It's a third of 90. And that's why the 30 minutes, you hear about it a lot as a period, optimal period for, that nappy thing.
Yeah.
So I can put 30 minutes in around that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 12 period when I've had a bit something to it, to actually zone out and catch up, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. I don't have to go to sleep. I don't have to do this. I could do it again early evening. I'm back on track. I haven't lost anything.
Yep.
And I think when you work back, if I have not got to do anything that day, it's that thing that some people get these days called days off. And but it doesn't happen much in sport.
Yeah. Yep.
If you sort of like, well, I don't have to. The thing is if you've got a 5-6 day period, you're always waking because of your chronotype, because of your occupation, and you're always having to wake around that time, that's when it's natural for you, or that's when you're being forced to, if you're a PM chronotype. That comes reset. So whether you've got the alarm on or not, and whatever you've done prior to it, you're likely to come out of a sleep state around that time because you've done it 6 days already or 5 days. It doesn't just go on to some other pattern. The sun doesn't start slowing down or speeding up just because it's your day off. It's there. So trying to shift out of that and ruin the best day of the week, your day off, by oversleeping or all sorts of things makes no sense. So I would wake normally. I would do certain post-sleep things, but I may not do all of them because I'm not actually trying to become a sleep coach today.
Right.
What I would do then, maybe I would go back to bed at 8 o'clock, an hour to 90 minutes later, and I would go, right, I'm going to put another couple of cycles in because it's been a hellish week.
Yeah.
I've been down at 20 cycles this week because there was planes delayed, there was this happening here, and it was just completely bizarre. So I do need to add some more cycles in to get up to my 30 cycles this week. So I'm going to go and put the alarm on and do 2 more cycles, 3 extra hours up to 11 o'clock. I'm going to do it. But I'm not going to roll past that.
Yep.
I'm going to keep within my 90-minute chunks. And then later on this evening, around 5-ish, I'm going to put a 20-minute one in there. And then I'll be going to sleep at 12:30 tonight and do my 4 cycles into 6:30. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have any alarms.
You suddenly sort of start to, instead of, oh my God, I've got to go to sleep earlier to catch up, or I've got to sleep in later to catch up. It's just as you're moving through there, you're able to just slot things in when they're perfectly natural, keep things in a balance. You're looking at how many cycles you get, whether it's 30-90 and 5-20s or 30s or 15s or 28-90s, and that you can really find a lovely balance. And that, strangely enough, is if you haven't got that anchor point of where you normally try and start your day, I can start my day at later times. Certainly night shifters have to do this.
Yeah.
And certainly schedules put you under pressure wherever you are, have to do this. So I've got a series of sleep times, a series of wake times, and as long as that one is my normal wake time, my most consistent wake time, 5 bottles of wine, Mike, puts that under pressure.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
The birth of a child puts that under pressure, Mike.
Yes.
So it's just a place where somebody can just chop their day up into periods of time, creating these time points. They don't have to think about it. And as soon as something happens in front of them, they just go, right, it's 12:30 into 6:30. I'm just going 4 cycles, but I'll pick one up tomorrow, 20, I'm sorted.
Yep.
And that happens while you're actually asking me to do this.
Yep. No, I love that.
So that's really why you pick you've got to wake at the same time and go to sleep at the same time. It doesn't happen for anybody.
Right.
You say, well, I'm going to try 3 cycles for this month, bit like a detox or a challenge. You say 4.5 hours at night. Yeah, 4.5 at night. I'm going to put a 30 in at lunchtime, a 15 in the evening. So that's just, all that is 45. So I'm actually just going for just over 5 hours.
Yep.
Wow. And you're all right. Yeah, because the strange thing is I'm sleeping for less, not crazy less, Yep. But what I'm happy is I'm getting more from it.
Yeah.
Because as you pointed out earlier, I can't tell anybody to stop worrying about their sleep or chilling out. You can't.
Right.
You have to take them along a path where suddenly they're going, hey, do stop worrying about it. I'm still awake at 2 o'clock. It's fine. It's fine. Because this is the most natural point of any human to be awake just after the deep sleep stages at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yep. That's when everybody wakes to go to the toilet, strangely enough.
Yep.
It's not science. It's just, and suddenly they become, just because I'm awake at 2:30 in the morning, then all the pilots and all the surgeons and all the nurses and all the other people on the different time zones around the planet and everybody else and all the athletes waiting to do an Olympic final tomorrow, wandering around their hotels trying to do other things because they can't, everything's against, everything's fine.
So I've been told ever since I was a little kid that 8 hours is like the golden rule. And obviously you do the math, 90-minute cycles, that doesn't quite add up. And we've talked about 90-minute cycles for probably the last 10, 15 minutes. So could you explain why the 90-minute cycle is so important and why you base everything around those 90-minute cycles?
Because all the years I've been wandering around the industry, you ask somebody how many hours of sleep they try and get, and they pick out the number 8, but they don't really know why. The reality of number 8 is within any 24-hour periods, we do need something like 30 to 33% of that time in a recovery state like sleep. So 8 is that percentage of 24. Up until the light bulb came along, we always slept in shorter periods more often, not in one block at all. So the light bulb came along. Then we had daylight saving time where we changed times in seasons. Then we have tech in our world today. And trying to sleep for 8 hours in one block has always been difficult. It doesn't suit the majority of people's daily lives. It creates a lot of problems with overheating, thoughts coming into your head, having to go to the toilet because it's a long, long time. It's a whole working day. We put ourselves under pressure because of inventing light. When you look inside a clinic and you're looking at the polysomnograph, tracking the brainwave patterns from your frontal lobe, then for a lot of, the academic world, they would look at a 90-minute period. And in that 90-minute period, it's when you're likely to have gone through the various stages of sleep, the light sleeper stages, the REM, the non-REM, the restorative stages, the little awakenings, the little disturbances, and how those brainwave patterns shift around in a constant balance of sleep-wake, 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 sleep-wake. And if you take that data over 90 minutes, not 45, not 30, then you can see a real picture of somebody's sleep pattern. So you then look at the next 90 minutes, the one following that, and you can also see the data in there that you can cross-match back to the first 90 minutes, the second 90 minutes, and the third 90 minutes. The reason why I like that is because it's all about patterns and rhythm and harmonies. It's all about 90 minutes is not an hour. So it's not to take us away from the hour just because we can.
Yeah.
It's because it's actually recognized inside clinical sleep data tracking that if you look at a full 90 minutes, you get good data to benchmark against. So it's good from that point of view. I think 90 minutes is a nice period of time. You think 15 minutes, an hour, it's a bit quick. Mm-hmm. But 90 minutes in my world, I feel what 90 minutes feels like if I'm in work at 9 o'clock, you start getting around to 10:30. I've been sat in front of this screen for ages. I've been talking to people for ages. Maybe I just need a little quick couple of minute break. Yep. And you start to feel it. So I like it from that point of view. And like you pointed out, 5 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours. Well, if you look at all the research and everything that's being tracked, I think the real number is most people are quite comfortable and happy with a period of 7.5 hours. If it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to actually create a sleep onset, to actually go into a sleep state and start this 90-minute cycle, then 10 or 15 minutes at the start, 5 or 10, 15 minutes coming out of it at the end, then there you've got your other 30. And so that's how it's positioned. And I think I know it does. It just makes somebody think, well, I'm going to try 6 cycles this week.
Right.
I'm going to try 4 cycles this week. I'm only going to get 2 cycles on a Friday. And I think from you as from the world you're in as well, Mike, if you can look at a client, an athlete, and you look across the next 7 days, maybe you sit down and go, this athlete probably requires maybe 6 cycles a day, which is 9 hours, right?
Yep.
We don't just stop. It's only because, you could have 6 cycles, 9 hours, isn't it? So you go, right, that's what we're on. So year 1, we're going for a 6-cycle routine. We want 9 hours per day in recovery. So how are we going to plan that out? That goes through all the way down. You put everything in from birthday parties to Olympic events and training. Comes all the way down to the next 7 days, and you go, look at the next 7 days. You know that you're not in full control of it, and you just go, we need, whatever that number is you need 6 times 7 is 42 cycles in the next 7 days. Are they going to be made up of 42 90-minute periods back to back? Oh, not on Sunday.
Right.
That won't happen on Monday. But we've got, 4 cycles nocturnally, because we get back from here, there. We need a nice break before we try and sleep to shift from, serotonin to melatonin to rehydrate, to chill out. Then we'll do 3 or 4 positive cycles there. We'll boost it with a 30-minute, because we class that as much as a 90 at night during the right times of the day. So we'll get our 42, but it's like 35 back-to-back 90s with 7 smaller, shorter periods throughout that 7-day period. So we're sorted. We're happy we can go. And suddenly, you've never thought of it like that. You're just going, go to bed now, get a good night's sleep, and I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I simplify it a lot. But principally, you wake up in the morning, don't you? You do what you got to do. You push it, you keep going. And then at a certain point, there's only about 8 or so hours left before you got to get up and down. And then you start trying to put yourself in a place where you're going to spend all this time doing this to get up and do it again. Rather than, this is happening from the minute you wake up, but completely and utterly subconsciously. And it's great. It's just simple stuff.
See, I think it's just really powerful because a lot of the people that listen to this, they work with athletes. And I work with athletes. So as well as I do, after a match, they're buzzing. It could be 1, 2 in the morning. They may only get 3 sleep cycles that night. And so now you know that. And that's how it is, because they're not going to be able to fall asleep immediately afterwards. So when you're thinking not just day to day, but thinking across the week, how are you going to lay this out? It's just really empowering. And not just for athletes, but a lot of trainers that will listen to this show. They're some of the worst about taking care of themselves and their sleep cycles. So I think thinking in this fashion will be really important for them.
I think it didn't set out to create some sleeping in 90 minutes is nothing new to me. It's been knocking around us for a long time, in clinics and all over the place. Sleeping polyphasically was perfectly natural up until the 1700s. That's nothing to do with me. What you sleep on, environments and things like that, all that sort of stuff. And you sort of go, well, it actually does empower you.
Yep.
Because, I was completing a workshop 3 weeks ago. We're talking July. In the UK, it's summertime. And the sun rose probably 4:35, 4:45. Because I went in to do a little test for a project I was doing. So I've taken all the curtains, all the blinds away. So I was sleeping with the circadian rhythms, completely in with the rhythms. And so you're awake then. That's an amazing feeling to be naturally woken by the sunrise. Because when you actually wake, you actually feel awake.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep.
You look at your watch and go, oh, Christ, it's 10 to 5. But you kind of go, well, actually, that's great because I did so much before I had to be at work with my colleagues.
Yep.
I could eat. I hydrated. I changed my clothes a few times, which always made me feel good because I thought I'm wearing the right stuff today. I was able to, make a few notes, put a few emails into the system to annoy people. And I went to the gym. Well, I didn't. I went for a run.
Yep.
And I was still in daylight.
Yep.
Because I had the time.
Yep.
And I was actually doing some exercises in the park in the daylight, not in the gym.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And you and then you go all through the day and thought, oh, I'm just taking 15 at lunchtime, bang. And then, hang on a minute. That day, Mike, there was over 16 hours worth of daylight.
Yep.
That's blue light. It's not, we love blue light. It makes us work.
Yep.
But that meant, on November 23rd, certainly in the UK, November 23rd, which is just around the corner, there will be less than 8 hours per day.
Yep.
Now, that's a significant 50% shift. And that meant at 10:30 at night, all my friends were out in the parks doing exercise classes and running and jogging and riding bikes and enjoying chilled bottles of beer after a great day. And it's 10 o'clock at night, Mike.
Yeah.
And they've all got to get up at 6:30 tomorrow to get back to work. And they're all rushing home and trying to get to sleep to try and get those hours in. And if only I knew for my little 15 minutes before I started my evening, took my pressure off, it meant I was still fine. And I knew that my brain, my pineal gland, was absolutely full to the brim with serotonin because of all the daylight that had been around me right up until that point. So I needed at least 1 or 2 cycles to shift that process around, being in darkness, being with candlelight, just allowing that natural process to shift. So I would then fall asleep at 2 a.m. I'd actually go straight through those cycles into 6:30, get the best from them, get up, nap it during the day, and I'm fine. Where everybody else were completely wrecked by the levels of blue light that they had on that particular day or throughout the summer. And I think that's when you start to really see some positive stuff, particularly, over in the US as you start to kick into certain seasons and get things moving, and you've got time zone shifts, and you've got the sun rising in Miami at 7 o'clock and not rising in Los Angeles till, 6 o'clock. You got things going on all over the place, and then that seasonal shift. And that's why I think all of these things really come together for coaches.
Yeah.
Because it's probably more important for the coaches who handle the schedules, who handle everything else, and can put something together as if Mike was doing this over the next 7 days, where are your little slots for the recovery? Do they add up to what you would like, 30 or 35, that equals that right 30% number out of that? Are they adding up? Can you see where they are? Can you see where the pressure points are? And then you can give that to your athlete and say, look, that's where you can be doing things. And if you don't do them at those particular times, they are going to add up, put that under pressure, which means you won't get that out of that bit, which will make it even worse, and you'll be crashing and burning by Friday.
Yep. I love it. So
Ta-da! But it is a little bit like that, isn't it?
No, it is, absolutely. And I think another part of kind of your process that I really enjoyed is not just the sleeping part, but the pre and the post-sleep. Now, a lot of people are probably familiar with pre-sleep routines or creating rituals before bed, but could you just explain a little bit, not only the pre-sleep, but I think most importantly, the post-sleep routines and why they're important in your program?
I think that, we find that little, let's try not to use the word constant because it scares people, but the consistent sleep characteristic everyday wake time. We get that there. And the unrushed process of starting your day, that's what you're trying to develop. And if you're a PM chronotype, you need to get up earlier because it takes longer for you to do this, or you need other interventions to help with the process. But principally, I do not want to be under so much pressure that as I'm swiping off the alarm on my device, I'm already engaging with all the notifications that are streaming through when I'm even not in a state to take them on board. I want to give myself enough time to empty the bowel, Mike. There's so many, they will hydrate, they will fuel up, but they're putting themselves under a little bit of pressure to get to the, to get moving to the next place. And you can easily jump past that point when the bowels are open naturally. So you're feeding on the good stuff, not the bad stuff. And that needs a bit of time for some people. So you're aware of that. So some people might get all of this done in 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
So it's not about you've got to take hours for it, but it's an unrushed process. Little mental challenges, whether it's ironing shirts and things like that, and sort of taking the pressure off packing all your bag and doing all your stuff before you go to sleep. So it's all ready for when you wake up. Then do it when you wake up. Create the space in the morning to get yourself ready for the day. And I think it only because, mid-90s, I was wandering around in a world where I had loads of recovery breaks, loads of them, waiting for trains, waiting for taxis, cabs. Now I'm on my smart device working, and social networking, all that sort of stuff. So I need to be careful that as I step into the world, that I'm as awake and operative as I possibly can to make good decisions throughout the day. I'm having a break now because I need to do this now because that's important to me when I get to here. I need to do something before I meet Mike at 1 o'clock because of my chronotype, because of he's having a meeting there and I don't want to fail because of this and that, all this sort of stuff. And that's why that first part and getting light into your brain is the most vital thing you can be doing. So, if it's dark outside, you need a dawn wake simulator, a light therapy tool in your bedroom to wake you naturally, getting that process going, which is essential. Far more, and then throughout the day, little tiny 1-2 minute breaks here and there. They all add up to your 8 hours. And the right sort of approach. I think that the pre-sleep one, I just mentioned one. There's no pre-sleep routine. All it is an understanding that what you've done from the point of wake on that particular day, when there's 16 hours worth of daylight, or when there's that particular event on, or when it's in the winter and that daylight isn't there, what you've been doing from the point of wake will determine your pre-sleep routine. And the one we just touched on is because I've been playing out there having lots of fun all day in 16 hours of daylight and artificial light and device light and everything else, that when I switch that off at 10 o'clock at night and say, right, that's the end of my day, my pre-sleep routine is actually giving myself at least an hour or so, or even 2 cycles, to come back down from it. Mm-hmm. Because just trying to fall asleep now, I'm probably going to wake up in a couple of cycles and then struggle to get back to sleep again. I want to sleep straight through, and I need to get rid of that light. So pre-sleep for me, above and beyond everything, is moving from warm to cool and from light to dark. And if the things that you're doing are not moving you from warm to cool, because that's the body temperature, sun's gone down, and if you've not doing from light to dark, then all the other types of things you might be doing with supplements, with exercise routine, mindfulness stuff, anything that you might be doing are going to have little impact on the actual level of recovery that you're going to get. So I kind of think that the start of your day puts you in the right place, sets you up in an unrushed way. It probably triggers good decision points throughout the day, right into the evening. I'm taking a nap now because of the light. I'm doing that. And all that sort of stuff adds up to, if I'm going to go to sleep, for 2 90-minute cycles for 3 hours. I want to go to sleep. I want to enjoy all the stages. I don't want to wake. I don't want to get too hot. I don't want to get disturbed by partners. I don't want thoughts coming in my head, and I want to wake and make sure I've got the best from all of that. And the only way I can do it is if I protect my brain to help me do that. Anything else is just going to get in the way.
Yep. So what do you do if somebody struggles to sleep through the night? And I'm asking for a friend.
Are you?
No, I'm not. No, I really struggle to sleep consistently.
That's code for it's about me.
Yeah.
I've got this friend who, I tell you what, this is why, when you walk back to, you struggle with the constant wake time, Mike. You must wake at 6:30, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. No. We're just gently identifying a wake time for that person for you. And mine is just, I made it up. My coach didn't make it up.
Yep.
Science didn't make it up. It was actually, that's my chronotype. That's a nice time for me. I'm normally waking around 6 o'clock anyway.
Yep.
And I normally put the alarm off and I'm hungry. Even if I've had a bad week and a bad night, I still have to get up. I can't stay in bed.
Right.
I mean, we have to have had a few serious bottles of wine or something to create a process of complete sedation to take you out of that. Illness would do it. Medication would do it. But under normal circumstances, no. So what happens is you take 6:30, we've got 5 a.m., we've got 3:30, we go back to 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got 12:30 and we've got 11. Now there's a process. Anybody can tap it in their browser and say they don't have to trust what I'm on about. It's all there at the end of your fingertips. And I don't mean that in a patronizing way. These are completely natural things to do.
Yep.
It's called sleep restriction. So what happens is you will just restrict the number of nocturnal cycles you have. You will maintain the balance with the shorter midday and early evening, 30-minute or less zone out period, just to keep things in harmony and balance. But you'll restrict the nighttime sleep. So you'll either take them down to 2 a.m. into 6:30. If they're really, really been struggling and you need to really reset them, then you shift them to 3:30 into 6:30. And effectively, they can do nothing more than sleep through. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to wake up and go to the toilet, right?
Right.
They go straight through. They're likely to be dumped, like falling asleep behind the wheel of a car, Mike.
Yep.
It's why would you do that? It's because you're out of control. So the brain will normally dump them into deep sleep. They'll do those couple of cycles into 6:30. They're going to feel absolutely rubbish, but they do anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, the reason why you're asking me for an answer is because this is how its impact on you. So you do that. They're up at 6:30. They think about that first start to their day. Lots of light. They're woken up with a dawn wake simulator. So before they don't have to try and get out of bed. They don't have to try and open the curtains. But you've got blue light coming on at 6 o'clock, waking them naturally at 6:30. They still feel crap, but you've got the light into them. Keep that process going for the first 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes, they're just trying to take a little tiny break, but avoid, going anywhere near bedrooms and curling up and listening to whale noises. These are just, go and get some water. But then you would take that controlled 30-minute period at between 5 and 7. You try to avoid the one at lunch, because what you're trying to do is change the evening pattern. So if they could take a 90-minute cycle or 30-minute cycle, either one of the two, around 5 or 7, that'll take the total pressure off the evening. So instead of, if they go to the cinema or whatever for the 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock showing because they need to do that, to do this, you just shift things around a little bit. So just trying to keep themselves awake up until that point, not doing anything. So it's a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
It's difficult to apply it without talking to you, but that's what you do, and you start to just, within the restrictions of their occupation and everything else, you just make those slight adjustments, and you use the early evening period to catch it, to put something in there.
Yep.
That means it will take the pressure off the night, so you can maybe, go to the gym later.
Yep.
You can do something else later. You're not worried about, being in your gym at 12:30 at night.
Yep.
Hopefully they wouldn't be, but it's kind of, it just shift things around a little bit.
Yep.
Because they're actually going to be awake at that particular time, and then once they start sleeping through, which they should do, once they start using those other periods and they tot up, they'll start to feel a lot better. And you know what the strange thing is when you do that with somebody?
Yeah.
They almost say to you, when I say, right, we're going to move you back to 2 a.m. now, and they go, do I have to? Because I'm actually really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting so much more work done. The pressure off the evening is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm not rushing around this, rushing around doing that. I have got friends who I like to talk to and communicate to
Right.
at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So they sort of go, I tell you what, I'll come back one more cycle from 3:30 to 2 a.m. and sleep straight through, keep doing the same thing, but I ain't going any further back.
Yeah.
And that's so. Yeah, sorry, everything I do is about coaching, Mike. So I'm ignoring you. But I think when somebody's got a problem like that, it's so exciting, Mike.
Yep.
Is you just get a hold of them, you put that time in, you chop the day up.
Yep.
You get that thing, you start to look at their schedule and tweak it around, and then suddenly you find this person. It doesn't sort of like happen in 3 days. It sort of happens quicker than you think.
Yep.
And suddenly they're looking at you going, oh my God, Mike, I was wasting so much time sleeping without benefits.
Yeah.
I just love this routine. I'm not scared about it. I'm in control of it. It's sort of, I tell you what, when July comes around in 2018, we're going to smash this. But if we'd have kept the other way around, it would have crucified us.
Yeah. Yep.
And suddenly they've just got such a better aspect towards everything they're doing. They just love you. It doesn't work for everybody.
Yep.
Of course it doesn't work for everybody, because that's why I work in sport, Mike, because I don't have to worry about people exercising, hydrating, committing to stuff, right?
Right.
It's the general public, and not every coach and not every athlete can be classed in that parameter, are they? They're not all great at everything, are they?
Right.
So I think it's you do need to have somebody who can commit to something, not for months and months and years, but they do have to grasp this process. And if they go and shove, a crate of beer halfway along that point, then they're going to shorten the time down of this happening, or even stop it and have to restart it again.
Yep.
Some other point, because you're right. The thing is about this, you're resetting. You're resyncing, you're resetting. So you need to do that.
Yes.
Otherwise, it won't work.
Yes. And that's why I asked you this particular question, not just for me. I know a lot of people like me have gotten caught up on this. You have to get 7.5, 8 hours, and then you're talking about the 90-minute cycles, and that resonated with me. But then even still, there's a lot of nights where 4 cycles, and I feel great.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because not only do I feel great, but like you said, I feel really accomplished because I have time to get more stuff done. And if I can get a little 30-minute, CRP in at some point during the day, that's really all I need on a lot of days. So it's just a really liberating feeling,
It is. And it's only listening to people like you and others throughout the time of this, when they sort of say, adrenaline, cortisol, anxiety, stress, will this be my last event ever?
Right.
I get an injury that might end my career. Never mind social media. Never mind instant paparazzi.
Yes.
Never mind all of that.
Yep.
That's always been there. So, come on. How on earth are you going to sleep prior to or even after, like you pointed out earlier in this podcast? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You've gone way past the circadian process. You're crashing towards wake. You're full of adrenaline. You're probably, in this day and age, completely over-caffeinated, trying to use that as this or anything else, energy drinks, whatever. Painkillers, given to you, trying to get you to the end of the game and still piling away inside you. So trying to go to sleep is the worst thing you could possibly do. And as you pointed out, you've got so many examples where I've stayed up all night long, feeling quite alert and awake, trying to get to sleep and just making it worse. And then when I've just kept up and done lots of good things around the house and tidied my bag and got all of those other things, gone through all the dross on my computer and listened to some music and watched something good and vibrant about life and reality on TV or whatever, and then suddenly I've fallen asleep in the last 2 cycles before I've woken up.
Yeah.
Because if you take the pressure off the front end, you get it down the back end.
Yeah.
If you try at the front end too hard, then you got no chance.
Yeah.
And some, there's a lot of athletes out there who actually never report because it doesn't sound right to tell the coach that last night I didn't go to sleep, because the coach looks at them and goes, "Are you telling me that when you went up to your room, you didn't get a good solid 8 hours and we've got a game tonight?" So, well, I told you this after the game. I got the best stats I've ever got. And coach, the night before, I didn't take sleeping tablets. I didn't over-caffeinate. I wasn't worried at all. I got 1 90-minute cycle in right at the death, which wasn't planned. It just happened. And I absolutely smashed it today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love it. So,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and that's where I think there's going to be kind of this education process, not just with athletes, but with coaches and helping them understand that, a lot of the stuff that we quote learned or unquote in the past about sleep isn't exactly right, and there's a better way to do it, and thinking in days, thinking in over the entire week, and how to fill out your entire week with recovery, not just sleep, as you would say. It's about recovery, can be such a profound thing for our athletes and our coaches to really understand.
Absolutely.
So, okay, lots of questions that I want to ask you, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So, big question, and I ask every podcast person that comes on the show this question. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Nick Littlehales one piece of advice about training in or life, what would it be?
The space-time continuum?
Yeah.
Wow, Mike. Come on,
big
give
one,
me
right?
that. I'm a simple little British lad. Come on. What do you mean?
Well, what would you change about the career path, maybe? Or what would you tell yourself if you could go back 20 years? What would you change?
I'm going to say this, but it's probably one of the it's not something that comes easy out of my mouth after 18 years of all of this stuff. I tell you what, if you could get the content of my book into the hands of every parent on the planet, and just in their own variation of picking their little bits from each chapter, start educating their children now and, who are coming along in the future, who would then influence the schooling systems and the teachers and the whole process, then I absolutely know for a fact, because I'm on my 4th grandchild now.
Oh, wow.
And, I'm not saying that we're all running around doing the R90 technique in the slightest, but what we do know is that we've got such a lot more knowledge about some of these things. Children coming along, they have far less effect than they should. Polyphasic sleeping. I think the whole process, of just getting that educational process going on very early, because, when you say to me about, going back and what, I was brought up in a world with no phones, no tech, no nothing, loads of recovery breaks, didn't know we weren't planning for them and everything else. The world that our next generation athletes are growing up in, the world everybody is growing up in, is such a demanding place. It's so easy to say it, Mike, but if they can't find a natural way to get through their day, I mean a natural way, this is a natural recovery process.
Yep.
If they're not, then what the indicators that we see all around us right now of overstimulating drugs, caffeine, snus, epidemic levels on sleeping tablets, melatonin subscriptions, people burning out, the amount of athletes who take their own lives in sports is on the increase, not on the decrease.
Yeah.
And that would be it. Don't try and be too clever, right? There's nothing in my book that you don't know about, Mike, and there's nothing that you can't communicate in my book right now. Just start doing it everywhere you possibly can, because that's the only thing that's going to protect these kids in the world they're coming into.
I love it. That's fantastic advice. And as somebody that has kids and is around obviously a ton of people that have kids, we've made this a huge emphasis with our children. And I think we see a difference, in their behavior and their ability to learn. So I appreciate that. And that's fantastic advice.
You only have to listen to what we've been talking about. And if you've got Jane and Johnny and you spot their, parents spot their chronotype early, then you don't make them do the homework at the same time every night before they go to bed.
Yeah.
You certainly buy them a dawn wake simulator earlier on in their lives, so they don't even know what's going on. Right?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you're sleeping polyphasically as parents, you've got more than 9 months to get ready for this.
Yep.
And it's just a breeze in the park.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Last but not least, we've got our lightning round. So I've got 4 questions. You can answer as short or as long as you feel like you need, okay?
Okay.
All right. So talk to me about that initial meeting with Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, were you... You're obviously a Manchester guy. Were you nervous? Were you gung-ho, ready to go? How did that go?
Such a long time ago, I haven't got a clue. I think it's 18 years. You know what it's like?
I know. Yeah.
It was crazy, man.
Yeah.
I think I'd done this. I'd signed the check as a sales and marketing director to put Slumberland on the front of Oldham Athletic shirts. Oldham Athletic was a local football club. They were just, they were trying to get all their local any companies locally to them to help sponsor the team. And most of the workforce in the factory were Oldham Athletic fans. So I signed that off because it seemed a really nice thing to do for all the workforce, that they could see the company they work for on the front of their football shirts.
Sure.
But there were a number of players that were homegrown through that club that went on to Manchester United. I also, so when I first met Alex, I wasn't nervous. He wasn't Sir Alex then.
Yeah.
We were not tweeting each other and all that sort of stuff. It was very much sort of a director of a local company. There was Manchester United. It changed a little bit because in the time space during that period, they went on to win the treble, which was a really sort of significant moment. So the focus came along. But he was very down to earth. He was tough. Would not suffer fools, as they say.
Yep.
From where he'd been brought up as a tough Glaswegian. He'd had a hard time in that club, because they tried to get rid of him on a number of occasions, because Manchester United was not always the high-flying club it was.
Right.
He'd gone through all of that. So I think it was just I was an Aston Villa fan, Mike.
Oh, man, I didn't know that.
So going to Manchester United really didn't have a lot of effect on me.
Yeah.
It was just a club. It was a manager. And I think in the world then, he was known well within his sport, but outside of his sport, not so much.
Yeah.
it's only been the fact that he stayed with the club for so long that he generated this legacy. But at that time, it was more to do with how do we make Manchester United a good club? We need to look at new things, and this guy seems to know some more stuff, so let's look at it.
Yeah.
So it was just a nice relationship, and he also, took stuff personally for himself, through me.
Yeah.
So he took it on board personally, So, we looked at his side and things like that, So
that's awesome.
I think, looking back, you can you almost start making things up in your head, but we
Sure.
it's, he's considered as one of the greatest managers ever. I don't think up until they won the treble and beyond that, there wasn't the same level of exposure.
Yep.
So it was a nice, simple meeting with a manager who was trying to make a difference here and there, and I suppose he almost treated me like, somebody who he was quite happy to let into the club.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Tell you, I find it difficult these days.
Yeah. It wouldn't be that easy right now, would it?
No.
All right, number 2. What book or books are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book called Sapiens.
Oh, yes.
Which has become, I think, I got it in, I think it was either November or December last year. I did some work with some people around my book launch, and they sent me that book as a little present, and it's fascinating. The other book that I've read recently was one called The Oxygen Advantage.
Okay.
I'm not a great reader of medical stuff because I, haven't been to school really.
Yeah.
Well, not after 16. Got a few O level, but didn't go on to uni. So,
Yep.
You give me some sort of academic book, and I like a bit of a story or something that might engage me. But The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown.
Okay. Perfect.
Is literally all about nose breathing.
Okay.
And about children, nose breathing in children. And I tell you what, in elite sport, while I'm knocking around, nose breathing and not mouth breathing, particularly when you're in a recovery state, is absolutely critical to the quality of it. And so I think, if you've got kids, read it. Just get hold of it, because it's a thick book, but there's certain bits along the way that you just go, I'm going to start nose breathing tomorrow because I realize I don't.
Yeah, it's something that we preach a ton of at our gym, so I'm going to definitely have to pick that one up.
Yeah. Well, do you use the little nasal dilators?
I have not played around with those all that much.
Well, if you're into breathing and stuff like that, then maybe if you want to cut this out away from your listeners because it sounds like a sales pitch, but if you read Patrick's book, and then there's a product called the Turbine, Rhino Med Turbine, and like the Breathe Right strip you used to stick on your nose.
Yeah.
Well, this is a nasal dilator that goes inside of the nose, and just turbine.com.
Okay.
Just have a look on the website. I can send you a packet of it because I've got hundreds of them, but I use them. When you get certain little product interventions, I get asked tens of thousands, will you endorse this, do this, cereal, supplements, hair masks, eye masks, pajamas, devices, technology everywhere. And I only go everywhere near. And like you've just endorsed it, I didn't say anything to you about it before, Mike. Nose breathing is massive.
Yeah.
And those things can really help. I got athletes wearing them all day long.
I'm going to have to check that out. No, I'm definitely going to have to check that out.
You check that out.
So, number 3, you've worked extensively in the cycling world, and I realize this could be a huge, massive undertaking with this question, but could you outline maybe your biggest struggle working with competitive cyclists? Because it's so vastly different than the soccer world where there's maybe 1 or 2 matches a game or a week. In this world, they're doing something every day. So what was the biggest struggle you dealt with there?
Well, I get involved with lots of conversations to sort of make out that I'm living and breathing with these athletes and these organizations every minute of the day. I deal with the recovery side and sleep, which is very much on the outside.
Yep.
And, so all the other professionals involved are far more engaged with the process of athletes. But I can tell you the one thing that I would highlight, which relates to any sport that I come across, and that is, particularly in cycling, is when you talk about the balance between activity and recovery, they look at you as if you're asking them to stop. And they want to spend 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day on a bike.
Right.
If they're off the bike, they don't feel normal walking around. They're either on turbo boosters, they're constantly with their sport, everything they eat. They talk about having a half a day off in a year would be Christmas Day afternoon. Now I think that really is about, I think it applies to lots of people. A common day profile of a lot of people I'm working with, and you'll know this is quite true, and it's almost unbelievable if you're not back to the 90s, was, they've got a 60 to 80 hour week, they've got a couple of kids, they've got a family, and they also do semi-professional Ironmans, and they're a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
And they're sort of looking at me thinking, I've got a few hours left in the week, I thought about doing something else. And you just go, you're nuts, And I think that's the word, is trying to get them to believe that recovery is not doing nothing.
Right.
It is not a waste of time, and it's an essential part to doing something. And that's a difficult one with sports like professional cycling.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I've worked with a handful of like competitive runners and that sort of thing, and I feel like endurance sports are a different breed for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, they are. Because like on the, they're just doing grand tours every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They moved from the Giro d'Italia to the Tour de France, then they're on the Vuelta right now. This is 3 weeks every day, 200k up and down mountains at the speed of light.
Yeah.
Me and you, as a tandem, busting our guts, would just keep up with them.
Right.
Anyway, when you're actually with them, they're not tootling on the road at 5 miles an hour during the scenery. They're flying along at 30 plus miles an hour. And for 5 hours every day and all that sort of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think there's sports like rowing, which is very intense on the training side, but the actual execution of it is quite not the same. So I think cycling's definitely up there when you combine mental and physical demands. That's a toughie.
Absolutely. All right, last but not least, what's next for Nick Littlehales? What do you have coming down the pipeline? What are you working on? Or what are you excited about right now?
I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
I think, the things that are exciting, like, is there are the percentage of the population. I mean, I'm talking a small bit at the moment, but it is growing, The book that I wrote was not intended to change the world in the slightest. I was actually almost quite embarrassed about writing it, didn't really want to do it, and thought it would be the end of my career. But, we've got people all over the planet, because they're all human beings. They're all sort of struggling in one way or another, but not always in a negative way. And, we're really getting the opportunity to, conversations like I'm having with you, Mike. It's not oh, that's a fantastic product, I might try it, or that's a new bike or a new pedal or a new nutritional thing. This is just a 100% natural human process that has just been ignored for too long, and we need a big catch-up as quick as we can. So the thing that's rewarding for me now is being able to be part of influencing that change. And we got schools and universities, pilots, nurses, doctors, politicians, you name it, kids at school, students, across the globe, all just coming in and telling us their story that, it's really changed everything about their lives, and it might have changed a health problem. It might have been a long-term thing that they've been suffering with for 20 or 30 years, and they've been going to clinics, they've been doing this, taking drugs, nothing has helped, and then they just, went through those little steps, got a little bit educated, listened to a podcast from Mike, and suddenly they're reborn, which is ridiculous. And they use words like, "You've revolutionized my life." So, yeah, there's more books on the way because there's so much more that can be tackled because it was such a top line. But, my biggest problem at the moment is trying to, get some more people around me so we can handle the demands and try to pass it on. And I'm a very modest and simple guy. So, if Mike wants to become the sleep coach and change sleep in America, you crack on, Mike. And just tell me how you get on.
I love it. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I truly appreciate it. Where can my listeners find out more about you?
They can go on Amazon and buy the book. They can go on any of our social media, at Sports Sleep Coach, on Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. We have a LinkedIn presence. We're doing lots of free content out all the time. We drag everything in we can from the world of sleep and decipher it, make sense of it, and put it out there with a better understanding of what you should and shouldn't take notice of. sportssleepcoach.co.uk. Again, great blog posts on there. Services about coaching and consultancy. I deal with some proper athletes, but all my services are designed for 14-year-old lottery funder, athletes for the future. So it's all accessible. And I think, anybody who's half interested in the whole subject and has enjoyed your podcast, get in touch, because there's one way or another that we can certainly help and answer their questions and get them started.
I love it. Well, Nick, thank you again for coming on the show. I truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Mike.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. I truly appreciate your support, and I hope you took a thing or two away that will make you a better trainer or coach. Now, before you move on, if you're enjoying the show, please take a minute and help a brother out. If you're not already subscribed, you can do that via iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, all of which you can find directly on my website. My goal is to get to 10,000 downloads per week, and I know people like you can help me get there. And if you're really catching some feels for the podcast, take 1 minute out of your day to leave us a review on iTunes. I'd greatly appreciate it, and I know it will help expose more people to the show. As always, thanks for your support, and we'll be back soon with our next episode. Take care.